Super, super. Right then. Welcome everyone to today's Monday lunchtime webinar from the Lifestyle Medicine team, which is us at Boots Online Doctor. We're thrilled to have you as ever on a very sunny day in April. It feels like summer, but I think we're still in spring technically. My name is Dr. Samantha Weller-Pilley. I am a GP. I'm also a nutritionist, a yoga therapist. I teach meditation. I'm very passionate about holistically looking at health, and I'm the clinical lead for lifestyle medicine here at Boots Online Doctor. And I am joined by my very capable and confident colleague, Ruth, who's going to say hello too.
Hi, thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. I'm Ruth Taylor. I'm a nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor. Don't know where that stammer came from. Sorry, everyone. Also a registered nurse and really happy to be here today. We love bringing our webinars to you as many Mondays of the year as possible. We're switching over to Tuesdays on the bank holiday week, and we've tried that. We're trialing that as a pilot this May and April just to see how that goes, whether that suits people. We may or may not carry on. And we're joined also by our lovely colleague Raman, who's here helping us with all IT things and sharing links that we need shared and all of those other things. So just to remind you, we will have a couple of polls that we'll be sharing with you across the course of the webinar. Those are completely anonymous. It's just really so we get some information about what's going on for you and also get you thinking a little bit, hopefully, as well, which is what this is all about. There are no such things as silly questions. So if you've brought something that you want to ask, please do ask it. Pop your questions into the Q&A box. We are delighted to take those, and we'll share some slides with you to begin with, and then we'll take your questions towards the end. We're just asking if you've been with us before, and we've also added a little question just for some feedback. If you have been with us before, it'd be really helpful to know what is bringing you back and what's helping you. So thank you for taking time to look at that. Also, just to put a little bit of a safety caveat in there in terms of your questions, if you are asking any medically orientated questions that is very specifically about your health, we may just redirect you to speak to your health provider, just because really those type of questions sit well and truly outside of the remit of our safe ability to answer them within a webinar. But if you do ask something that we can't manage to answer because it's not safe to, we will just redirect you. So ask away and we will happily guide you with any questions you ask. So great, let's crack on, Sam. It's quite a great webinar. I love this one. Really is an interesting subject and one that we don't put so much attention into, I think.
Absolutely.
Good. So we're going to talk a little bit about the circadian rhythm. Do you want me to kick
Yeah,
off with this, or would you
please
like
do.
to?
Please do, Ruth. Go
All
for it.
righty. So this is quite an emerging area of research, and I guess it's no surprise because how we're now living our lives in the 21st century is very different to how our ancestors lived. But actually, interestingly, in terms of our genetics, although there are some shifts in our genetics, we're genetically much the same as we've always been. So it's really understanding that actually, if we're living a life where we're awake for a much longer period, we've got electricity, we've got all sorts of machines and gadgets that we can use across the course of the day, how is that affecting our weight? And so there's now some emerging sort of area of research called chronobiology, which is all around our biology and our circadian rhythm. So I find this actually really fascinating. It's something I've only dived into in the last year, really, and I'm no expert. There may be experts in the room, so if you've got anything to add, please do, because for Sam and I, this is the whole new area, really, of understanding. So our sort of body clock is connected to our brain. And our eyes have a big impact on how our body really functions for us. So light and light sensitivity and getting exposure to light are really important. And also dark. Why this is important in terms of weight management is actually because our day has now extended much longer than it used to be. We find that we're often eating at night, we're offering late in the evening, we're often eating sort of skipping breakfast. We have all sorts of random patterns that go on in terms of our eating patterns. So it's just interesting to sit and look and see whether this suits us as a species or whether actually there's something for us to pick up from our ancestors. So looking at the research, it looks as if eating earlier in the day is something that can actually boost weight loss. So actually putting calories towards the beginning of the day rather than the end of the day can be helpful. Having a high calorie breakfast can enhance insulin sensitivity, and this is one of the things we're really keen for you to get an understanding of, because insulin sensitivity is a key component of lasting weight loss. So this is really interesting research. Late night eating or eating late or irregularly can be impactful on reducing your amount of insulin sensitivity and also disrupt our metabolic health. So, our metabolic health is all to do with our cardiovascular health, inflammation, and a loss of insulin sensitivity. So, actually, the one thing that comes out of all of this research is that consistency, having regular meal times, regular patterns, can really help our bodies function effectively. And I think this is really important for us all to just take a little bit of thought around how this affects us, what this means to us. We often have shift workers who come along. This can make it really challenging. We know that we've been shift workers ourselves, so we really understand. But also matched into this, and we do have a whole webinar on sleep, is thinking about a consistent sleep schedule, a consistent waking time, getting light on your eyeballs first thing in the morning to really help your circadian rhythm function well for you. So I find this quite interesting. It's a whole different way of looking at weight management, I think, in terms of how our bodies work best for us, which is something completely different to what we're eating. So this is fascinating. We're also sharing our second poll, so do have a look at this. Again, this is completely anonymous, really interesting for us to see what's going on, and for also for you to perhaps have a little think about when you're eating, what's going on for you, whether you're snacking a lot during the day. So let's have a look and see what's going on with this poll, and then we'll move on. So let's see. So the majority of people who are answering so far generally are eating 3 meals a day. Is that the biggest answer? And one or two snacks. So that seems to be the sort of bigger percentage.
Yeah.
Snacking seems to be
Yeah.
evening and afternoon. Yeah, that I guess I was expecting that. Would you have expected that as well, Sam?
Yes, and the kind of when do you snack the most in front of the TV is the winner
Yeah,
while watching, in the evening while watching TV, which I think is a pretty common behavior. I think a lot of us have kind of adopted that one as a bit of a stress reliever at the end of the day. Um,
yeah. I'm laughing because I recognise that.
yes.
Good.
Um, yes, I try and leave gaps between my meals, which is great. Lots of us are leaving gaps between our meals. Um, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, really interesting.
And
Really
sometimes not,
interesting.
and some people not thought about it before, which is great. It's a um this is not about judging ourselves or anybody else, actually. It's just a way of kind of taking a bit of a measure, reflecting a bit on what we might be doing at the moment and what we might be able to change and use the science, to influence our behavior change so that we get the results that we are after. So thank you everybody for answering those questions for us.
Yeah, really helpful. Very interesting as well. And really interesting for you to hopefully just start thinking, okay, if we tune into what's going on in this webinar today, is there anything we can take away that could really make a difference to you? Because that's really why we're here. So let's move on and talk a little bit about time restricted eating. And this is a
Yes.
very popular new modern approach, really, isn't it? Or maybe not so modern. Sam, over to you.
Yeah, I can take this one. So, time restricted eating. So there's some research that shows that intermittent fasting, which I think lots of us will have heard of, can help people to lose body weight and also lower levels of fasting blood sugar, fasting insulin, and might improve some of the signaling of our hunger hormones and fullness hormones. Okay, so that means that it would reduce, there's some evidence that it would reduce insulin resistance and lead to a better appetite control for us. Okay. And that can come when we're using these eating windows is what we can refer to them as. And some of you let us know in the chat box if anyone has tried time restricted eating before. So the common patterns that we've got on the slide are 12, 12, 14, 10, 16, 8. So what that means is basically what time restricting eating is adopting this regular eating pattern. So you have an eating window of, say, in a 12-12 distribution for 12 hours of the day, you would enjoy your 2 to 3 meals a day. Okay. And for 12 hours, you wouldn't have anything. So that's a nice way to start. So basically, and we could tie this into what Ruth was saying earlier, and maybe you would have sort of a good breakfast and a good lunch, try to minimize the snacking, stay hydrated throughout. But at the end of that 12 hours, say you had your breakfast at 8:30, you wouldn't eat again after 8:30 in the evening. So that would be that kind of pattern. And as perhaps you got used to that and found it, no, this is pretty easy for me to maintain, you could challenge yourself a bit more and have a 10-hour eating window and a 14-hour fast, which mostly would be overnight, where you wouldn't have anything to eat. And generally, we would recommend that that sort of starts in the evening rather than sort of in the morning. Would you agree with that, Ruth, that it's kind of the evidence is a bit more that sort of not to eat late into the night, as you were saying on the previous slide with the circadian rhythm, that it's been shown that actually it's better to have your calorie or your energy intake in the morning, should we say?
Yeah, very much so. It's really interesting because I know it's sort of quite often what people aren't doing anymore. As
Yes,
people are sort of
absolutely.
saving their main meal up to later in the day.
Yeah, so it's maybe a bit of an adjustment for some of us, but it can be quite a nice way to kind of look at things. And some of us do really well with kind of structure. So it's giving you quite a clear structure of hours, and it's pretty easy to sort of put in a time at like, okay, 8:30, 8:30, I stop. I can have clear fluids after that if I really need to. That's fine, but that's when it stops. So it kind of gives us those boundaries that sometimes really help. For some folk, it's really helpful to have those boundaries in, and it's kind of a clear way to do things. Intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, you can start from wherever you are and build from there. So you don't, we would always recommend that you start with something simple like a 12-12 and not going not increasing that window of fasting until you're comfortable with the sort of bigger windows of eating, if that makes sense. Um, it's not suitable, of course, for some folk. I would say if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, I wouldn't recommend it for children or teens under 18, and folk with type 1 diabetes, insulin-dependent diabetics. It's not ideal for. And of course, we wouldn't recommend sort of bringing in complication if you have a history of eating disorder. Then I would really be working with a professional there. We've got some
Very
nice
much.
comments about this. So some folk have tried it before. Um, Marowinian naturally goes for 14:8. Um, yeah. Okay. Great. Ooh, you can naturally maintain between 12 and 8 as your eating window. Good for you. Um,
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is we're all very individual. So I can see a couple of people have tried it and it really hasn't been the right pattern for them. And that's absolutely fine. There is no right or wrong. It's about finding your way and what makes you feel good. Because actually, when you're on some sort of like health process, we want to also not only if you're here because you want to lose weight, it's not just about losing weight. We want to feel great at the same time. So if you're struggling away and doing this intermittent fasting and you're just finding your energy is blowing out or you're having energy slumps, which is what some people were mentioning in the chat box, then it's not for you. It isn't for you right now. It might be for you one day later in the future. And it really doesn't matter. We are all individual. I used to do 12/8 and 16/8 rather, but I just actually now, for whatever reason, maybe I'm in a different life phase. I don't find it's perfect for me. I find a 12-hour window much better. So we do change as well. I think that's important. Nothing we change. We definitely change.
yeah. And I think it's structure. There was a question there, does it have to, how often do you have to do this? I think it's like Ruth was talking about, that circadian rhythm is teaching your body a certain routine, a certain pattern. So I think if you are going to go for a time restricted eating pattern, it does need to be fairly consistent for it to have the effect that you want it to have. And it's, But if you start it and do it for a week or two and think, oh, this really doesn't suit me, that's okay. You don't have to do it. It's an option that we're suggesting here.
Absolutely. And another approach, which was very popularized by Michael Mosley, is sort of this variable calorie intake. So almost like the alternate day fasting. So this won't suit everyone either, but it's another option to think about. And for some people, it can really work. And this would mean you would sort of really cut your calories back on 2 or 3 days a week. And for most people, you'd be thinking around 600 to 800 calories on those very low calorie days. But then on the days that you aren't on the low calorie days, you'd eat a standard amount of calories. For many people, this can be really helpful in terms of flexible eating approaches around special occasions or just, not wanting to always have their mind focusing. I think the key thing is on the days when you're eating your standard calorie intake, you actually do need to work out what your sort of calorie level to maintain or to lose weight is. We're not great proponents of calorie counting because we know not all calories are equal. Number one, it becomes really tedious and boring. Number two, and the research tells us that we all, or the most of us, will start cheating and actually just sneaking in little extra tidbits here and there because perhaps we're bored. We don't want to pay attention to everything all of the time. So, really, I think it works for a few people. But you need to get a real sense of perspective as to what your normal healthy calorie intake is, because you don't want to be going so high on the days that you're not sort of crashing down that the effect is blunted. Um, what you want is overall across the week, if you're following this pattern, is that your calorie intake across those 7 days is less, so that you end up with some weight loss at the end of those 7 days. If you go too high on your non-restricted days, then you might lose that impact. I hope that makes sense. I think it can work. I know a few people personally in my own life who adopt this style of eating. They love it. Worked for them. I think if you're taking a weight loss medication, we really wouldn't advocate it at all. It's just not safe at that point in your life. So if that's you, then
Yeah.
please don't even consider adopting this at the moment.
Yes. I mean, the time, so that's the sort of alternate day fasting or the 5-2,
Mm,
whereas you could do a time restricted eating and have one of those patterns. So it would be every day, that 12-12 window or the 14-10, 16-8 pattern. That would be okay if you're on a weight loss medication. But the 5-2 is the, it wouldn't be, um, it wouldn't be advisable. Where
yeah.
you want to stay more consistent on a daily basis. There are loads of questions I can see in the chat box, which we will hopefully pick up. But there is a Q&A box, everybody. So if you want to, we're more likely to find your question if it's in the Q&A box. And I'll just reiterate the benefits that I mentioned about time restricted eating. So there is some evidence that time restricted eating, so doing 12-12, 14-10, 16-8, as in having a eating window and a fasting window over the day, may improve some of our hormonal signaling, indicating our fullness or our hungriness. It can reduce insulin resistance and lead to a better appetite control. So that's one of the benefits someone asked in the chat box, but I think it's worth reiterating. Okay, but we can talk about um, chewing. Chewing is the first mechanical step of digestion, of course. If we chew our food well, our food becomes much easier to break down and digest, so we absorb more of the nutrients from that food. Um, we would suggest aiming to allow 4 or 5 hours to allow your gut that time to reset and adequately digest your previous meal before you have your next meal. So, what we always suggest, and when we talked a lot about this last week when we talked about what to eat for weight loss, having fiber, protein, and healthy fat at each meal will help you feel fuller for longer and enable you to reduce that urge to snack between meals. I know that a lot of us snack between meals, and sometimes it's habit, sometimes it is just, I always have a chocolate biscuit with my coffee at 11 o'clock, and sometimes it's habit, sometimes it's hunger. But experiment, see what happens if you change, have more of a savory breakfast, for example, with some protein, with some fiber, with those lovely healthy fats, and taking it from there, how it influences your hunger over the day. Okay. Um, And we know also that when we feel full from eating a healthy meal, you satisfy that physical hunger and maintain your energy over the day. And that can also enhance, of course, nutrient absorption, increase hormone sensitivity. Um, uh, and we talk about leptin, ghrelin as our our satiety and our hunger hormones, as well as insulin, which is our sugar storage hormone. Um, we also would encourage you to allow time after your final meal of the day before bed to really support that optimal energy use of the energy in that meal. So there's less excess energy needing to be stored because you've just gone to bed and lain down for the night. So ideally, you want to eat your evening meal at least 3 hours before bedtime. Okay. Um, and it doesn't need to be a large meal. It could be a smaller meal, a very mindful snack. But that's completely up to you, and it might be something that changes over time. Um, but however even if you manage to do this to maximize those times between meals and maximize your digestion and boost that insulin sensitivity, those are all wonderful things. I will also make mention here of this. Cravings aren't always physical. They can be psychological, and that those can result from an emotional response to an event. We talk more about this in our cravings webinar, and how to overcome those. But just to mention things like I think we all have probably experienced eating things that perhaps aren't the best for our weight loss journey when we're stressed out, perhaps if we're sad, perhaps if we're bored, perhaps if it's, there's so many reasons, and each of us will have our own stories around that. But just I don't want to I want to really acknowledge that as well, that can be a big component of us um overeating or over consuming on in terms of energy, or maybe even sweet. It's often sweet treats that we crave, isn't it, when we're or snacky things like crisps, like high carbohydrate, let's say high carbohydrate snacks when we're not feeling at our best.
Yeah, that's definitely me. Boredom and availability. So if it's
Yes.
there and I'm bored, it's a really big issue. I have to really work hard to not fall into those
Have our
traps.
slides gone, Ruth? Are we still
Mm,
sharing slides?
Mine are still here.
Oh, are we still sharing slides,
Is
everybody?
everybody
Sorry,
still
I
seeing
can't
the
see them.
slides? I think that's very peculiar. I think they're still shared. If
Oh,
anyone
you're still
can't,
seeing them.
perfect.
Sorry, it's just me. I don't know. Ignore me. Carry on, Ruth.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So, don't know what's going on. Mad Monday. There we go. Um, so I guess all of this actually then works very closely through to our suggestion that we all think about whether we need to snack. Is snacking actually part of our structure? Is it something that we need to do? Are we really eating a snack because it's boredom or all of the things Sam's just talked about? One of the things that we know from looking at all of the science and all of the research is that actually one of the things that we need to try and all of us do for our health in general is to eat less often because we want to be producing insulin in a very intelligent way. We want our bodies to work intelligently for us, and we have to help our bodies work. So, snacking less is a really key fundamental component of making this work and helping weight management as well and weight loss. If we snack less, it will reduce the amount of insulin that we have to produce. This means we will store less fat and also our hunger will start becoming a little bit more stable. Now, to snack less, we need to make sure we're eating really well in all of the meals that we do have. So, in those 2 or 3 meals that we have, we want to make sure that we're nailing a really balanced plate. So, Raman, if you could share the core meal eating plan, this is what we would recommend. We'd recommend you follow something like the core meal eating plan. I can see a couple of people have put comments in the chat box that for them, calorie counting is the only way that it's going to work for them to lose weight. I really respect you sharing that. So thank you for telling us. It's true for some people, not true for everyone. Some people can follow something like this core meal plan, get the principles of eating, and that can really work for them as well. So what we would really recommend is get those principles under your belt, really nail your protein with each meal, really nail those healthy fats, and really think about where you're starchy carbohydrates are coming from, whether you need them, whether you're using them appropriately, and whether you could be upping your vegetables as a form of carbohydrate instead. This is really important. We really recommend you snack as a treat, so something you do occasionally rather than routinely. Um, so I will occasionally have a snack, but it's for me, for my body to work well for me, I need it to be less often. And I think that's true for most people I speak to. Um, I hope that helps. Sam, thoughts around snacks?
Thoughts around snacks? Yes, I think, from the poll answers, we've got a lot of folks here who do enjoy snacks over the day, and that's we start from where we are. This isn't about judgment, and it
Mhm.
might be that you gradually reduce the snacks or swap them over to something. That picture of the apple and the walnuts there, that's a great snack 'cause it's got some good. It's a bit sweet. You've got the fiber and the healthy fats in the walnuts. If that's something, something that you might enjoy, something sort of, you know, that's got that. It's got all the components that you want. It's a good snack. It would be filling as well. So can you swap over and just really reflect on things on, what is that snack that you're having? Is it a cookie? Is it a whatever, a cake or something sweet that we know those things spike our blood sugars. We know that they add, they're hugely high in sugars and energy and all of that sort of thing. We know it's not really helping us on our weight loss journey. What can we swap to that we would still enjoy? That but that would you know that we would still love but and would love us back, that's what we're really talking about here. And Ruth alluded to it earlier, we don't talk about calories so much because you know calories are but one thing to measure in a plate of food. We want to be looking at the fiber content, the protein content, the nutrient content, what it's actually going to be giving us aside from, yes, energy. What are the other things that our food is going to be giving us? Um, Sorry, I don't want to go up on a tangent because I know you guys have got loads of questions and we do want to get to them. Oh, thank you, Madeline, for letting us know. Core meal plan has worked for me. I've focused on getting enough protein rather than calorie counting. Fabulous. Great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. So I can't see the slides, but we're going to think about drinks next. So basically, when we talk about wanting to lose weight, going on a health journey, we of course we think about our food intake, our snacking, but we just wanted to also bring your attention to drinks and really bring your attention to the energy content in drinks, which often we know from the research that it's very easy to consume a lot of energy in our drinks, and it doesn't feel like we are compared to if we had a chocolate bar or a big plate of food. We just don't notice it in the same way. So, things like the lattes, the coffees with those sweet syrups in, that sort of thing, fruit juices even, which we think might be a bit healthy, but actually the fruit juice has had all the fiber taken out of the fruit, so it's just the liquid and a lot of fruit sugars in there. Sports drinks can be very high in sugars because they are designed for, someone who's doing athletics, who is sweating their guts out, and then they're trying to replenish the sugars and the electrolytes that they've lost during that session. So just bearing those in mind, that sometimes we don't realize that they look like they're healthy drinks, like a sports drink you think would be pretty healthy, but actually it's going to be quite high in sugar and salts because that's what you want to replace. You want those quick burn sugars if you're doing a gym session or running or what have you. Also thinking about alcohol, of course, we can't really talk about weight loss without talking about alcohol. And um, understanding that there are hidden calories in alcohol itself. Obviously, as we drink more alcohol, we get less inhibited, so we can make different choices than if we had, a more clear head on our shoulders. Um, we can also, there's some evidence about, you know, uh, increased fats, visceral fat storage when we consume alcohol. Um, and also, just to mention here, we mention this quite a lot on our webinars, that the zero calorie or artificially sweetened drinks actually have a very similar effect on our insulin levels. And because our bodies don't still recognize the sweet taste, so they don't, and your body is not, these artificial sweeteners have only been around for, the last 10, 15 years, whereas our bodies are thousands and thousands of years old. The mechanics are fantastic, but they won't recognize the difference between a sugar sweetened um, drink or a artificially stevia sweetened or whatever it might be. Um, so just notice that it will have the same effect in terms of blood sugar balance over the day. So some of us may have a huge sweet tooth, which I do, and it is very much a slow process of reducing sweetness in the things that you have control over. So, for example, sugar in your tea or coffee or what have you, and like slowly reducing that and starting to appreciate a less sweet flavor and still enjoying it. I think if you go suddenly cold turkey, it might be that everything just tastes horrible and you can't have the cup of tea or you don't enjoy your tea like you used to. Just doing things gently is something that we would really recommend and not changing everything at once. We talk all about this in our habits webinar, but it can be very overwhelming. We're telling you a lot of stuff that, maybe a lot of it you already know, maybe none of it you already knew, but we just want to make it really clear that this is not a fad. We're not talking about a gimmick or a fad. We're talking about step by step and a gradual change because that's the sort of change that
Mm.
your head can kind of get around. So it becomes when we start to establish habits, it takes time, but that's the sort of change that lasts. And that's what we really want for all of you.
Yeah. And the other thing just to mention about drinks is there's water and how important it is to be really well hydrated. And there is a very, very small amount of research around water and how it can really help. But the research that I've come across tells us that it can help to, if we're properly hydrated, being properly hydrated with water can help us to burn fat. And equally, if we're dehydrated, we are more likely to have more issues in terms of storing fat. So I think that's really interesting. And there was one piece of research that I came across that suggested 1 or 2 glasses before a meal can really help in terms of appetite management and also weight loss. So again, just something to think about. Don't need to rush into it. We certainly wouldn't recommend that you go from drinking very little water to drinking loads and loads. Again, it's a habit that's got to be a step change. So do it gradually and see how you get on with that. And so, really, this is our recap. So, we want you to start thinking about slowing down. Actually, no, this is not quite the recap. So, we want you to start thinking about actually how you eat, because again, this is an important thing. It really mixes up with the chewing slide and taking time to eat. So, we want you to chew, we want you to slow down, we want you to eat mindfully. Maybe start putting your knife and fork down between meal mouthfuls, just so that you actually really pace your eating and enjoy your food. That mindful eating is about really loving what you're eating, really enjoying your food, learning new tastes, really learning to enjoy eating the food that loves you back. This is our phrase for our little team. Actually, this is so important, isn't it? It's just about embracing change. It might be that you have to get brave. Things I never used to eat before I worked in the world of nutrition were things like avocados. I'd just be like, no, I don't eat those. Whereas now I love it. So it's bizarre and it didn't happen overnight. It took quite a long time. Working as a nurse, I ate more chocolate than I care to remember. I choose not to do that now. Again, it's a work in progress and it's not easy. We all make those choices. We all have to do what's right for us, don't we, at the end of the day? So, just a quick recap. So, Sam, do you want to take this?
Oh, yeah, sure. Everyone, we talked about this week. We've talked about we've talked about how we're eating, how often that we're eating, and just reflected on our eating patterns, our snacking patterns, perhaps. Um, and then we talked about time restricted eating, eating within a particular eating window, having a daily fasting window overnight, and including some of the morning or evening. Ruth talked about how it might be a little bit better to have more of the fast later in the day, sort of starting that fasting time later in the day and having a good breakfast in the morning. Um, but we have to do what is right for us because we're all individuals and we all have different routines and different schedules. Um, so we want to really encourage you, we shared the core eating plan there, talked about eating a balanced meal, really looking at the fiber, the protein, the healthy fats on our plates 2 to 3 times a day, so that you don't have that physical urge to snack. And also consider also sometimes the 5-2 pattern, for example, would give you that variability to change your food intake around events and around exercise as well. So we are yeah, these are the things that we've talked about how to eat over today's webinar. We're going to come on to the Q&A section of this session. Oh, we've got one more poll. Um, so yeah, based on what we've talked about today, what changes do you think sound interesting to you that you might give a try to have a look at? We've just launched another poll. Have a look again. Answers are anonymous, and we will move on to stopping sharing the slides and going for your questions. Great. Chewing
Brilliant.
more is fantastic. Really good. A really good thing. Actually helps you enjoy your food more, I think, as well. I think
Yes.
sometimes if you've for whatever reason, some people really wolf down their food and it's quite impressive, really. But it's yeah, it doesn't it's much better to be slower. It's much easier on your body in terms of digestion. So your body can kind of prepare to the rest of your digestive tract can prepare itself to receive that food if you give some time to the chewing activity. Obviously, you do some of that breaking down already with your teeth. Yeah, creating more routine, eat within a defined time. Great.
Great.
Consciously reduce snacking. Yeah, great. Thanks everybody for responding
Loads of
there.
questions in the chat box, so we'll try and dig some of these out. We will go over to the Q&A box and start there and then move over to the chat box. Raman, if there's anything we missed, can you try and highlight it for us if at all possible? That would be great. Thank you, everyone.
Um, there's a question here about finding links. So if you go onto the 10-week weight loss course, which is a free course that we have for everybody, it's got all the information that we give in the weight loss webinars on the 10-week weight loss course. And at the bottom of every module, you will have the links to all of the resources we send out. So you can find that on the Boots. If you go onto the weight loss section of the Boots Online Doctor website, you'll find all of that. But if there's anything particularly you want us or Raman to kindly share today, just let us know in the chat box and we'll share it for you.
Brilliant. There's an interesting question that's come from last week, so thank you for bringing it forwards to this week, asking about combining high glycemic load foods with low glycemic load foods, and does that lower the overall effect for the meal? Yes, from what I've read, you can do that as a way of lowering that overall effect, and we would recommend probably sticking with as many of the low glycemic foods as you possibly can, really making sure that protein's there. And if you wanted something that was a higher glycemic number, such as maybe some rice or some pasta or a baked potato, really making sure you've got all of the other components there, which will blunt the sort of glycemic load of that meal. That can work. There are some great cookbooks out there that can help you get your head around that as well. So brilliant.
Great. Does the intermittent fasting include fluids such as fruit juice and tea with skimmed milk? Um, I would say clear fluids if you're doing it kind of strictly time restricted eating. So outside of your eating window, I would just go for clear fluids. I wouldn't go for fruit juice because it's going to be very sweet and that's just going to be sugar, a sugary drink basically.
Yeah.
Um, if you can just could you have a black tea or a herbal tea and not have the skimmed milk? That would be better. I would rather that you had tea and skimmed milk rather than the fruit juice. I would say fruit juice is kind of out on um, the um, the non-eating window, if
Very
that
high
makes sense.
glycemic as well.
Yeah.
So combine it with some food, really maybe dilute it with water. And if you don't find it palatable, maybe think about having it less often if you can.
Mm.
That's what we would recommend.
Yeah.
Good question here. What time would you recommend to be your last meal for a 9 to 5 office worker? So if you were having 3 meals, depending on what time you're going to bed, if you're going to go to bed at 10, maybe, for example, then you want to be eating around 7-ish if you possibly can, which hopefully after work you would have time to come home and prepare something or put something in the slow cooker. Yeah, really into the slow cooker idea for working days because it can really help. Oh, interesting question here, Sam. Somebody's saying they've seen claims that intermittent fasting increases cardiovascular risk. So-called experts are claiming that there are studies to support this. Is there actually any such evidence at all? I couldn't put my hand on my heart, pardon the pun, and say there is no evidence. There is always conflicting evidence with all approaches, but this is a style of eating that is popularized by many leading experts in weight management. There's a really great Canadian endocrinologist called Jason Fung, who is an absolute advocate of intermittent fasting for weight management. I do not believe there is. I'm happy to go and trawl. Sam, are you aware of
Um,
anything?
No, not for cardiovascular risk. I have seen some so the 5-2, for example, perhaps is not so great for women who have difficulty with hormonal balance. That can
No.
be a little bit tricky. I don't have anything more specific to say than that. So that could be a little bit tricky. To be honest, rather than some people love the 5-2 because you have a lot of flexibility and you could have, birthday parties and things like that on the days that you're not doing the restriction. And it kind of makes things a little bit more flexible for some, and some people love it. Um, I really think that the daily time restricted eating is an easier way to introduce this kind of way of eating. Sort of stopping eating
Yeah.
earlier in the evening is easier in my mind, but it might not be for everybody. But yeah, I think it's a good point, and thank you for asking the question. And I think we could have a look at both of those, maybe sort of um, 5-2 for women. What are if there is any evidence about that, and cardiovascular, if there is
Yeah.
robust evidence for that as well, then of course, as far as I know, there's no strong evidence in that. There's a lot of evidence for benefit, but it's always good to keep an eye on these things. Things emerge, don't they?
Somebody's asking what time breakfast and lunch and dinner time should start and finish. I would say start with that 12-hour. So just start with your 12-hour window. So 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., whichever works for you or around those times. So you're starting eating at 7 a.m. You're going to finish eating by 7 p.m. and then just map out your day around what you're doing, whether you're working, whether you could take a break at specific times and just see what works for you. Um, yeah, it's not complicated. Just make it really simple for yourselves.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Someone's asked here, I'm on medication, take them 3 times a day, always have to have something to eat just when taking them. Sometimes when I'm up late, they get pushed back. So sometimes it goes to 11 p.m. or later. Try to eat something healthy, but it's still after time. You shouldn't eat anything really late at night. How would you get around that? So, in the sleep webinar, we do talk about sort of having, if you need to, having a small, maybe sleep-friendly snack before bed. So something like I would have something very small, like maybe like a yogurt or a handful of nuts, or I would, and I wouldn't take them immediately before you go and lie down. I'd try and give yourself an hour or so at least, even if you're having just a small snack, or kiwi fruit as well. It have some components in them that support healthy sleep. So kiwi fruit is quite a good thing to have with perhaps with your late night, if you need to have something late at night. But yeah, do try not to lie down straight after you've eaten, it just might be quite uncomfortable and might stop you sleeping if you had much more, I would say.
Yeah, or just something like a couple of oat cakes, a little bit of almond butter, just something small, just enough to give yourself the support that medication needs. And don't worry, if you get this right 5 days a week and 2 days a week, things slide. It's okay.
Yeah,
We don't have to
exactly.
stress.
Yeah.
Okay, is it okay to have fruit or vegetables or other low-calorie healthy foods as snacks? Okay, so the concept around snacking is absolutely if you're switching from a really high calorie snack, and you're moving towards reducing your snacks or changing your snacks, that's a great first step. So absolutely you can do that completely. What we would advocate for your long-term aim would be to reduce down to your meals and maybe one snack, and then your meals and maybe no snacks. So, just to really, what we're really trying to advocate is that we have gaps between our meals so that we get that insulin sensitivity. So even if we had a milky drink, for example, that would require our body to create some insulin, so we'd have more insulin being produced. So if we had a milky drink as a snack, for example, that would have an impact. So it's sort of just about you, where you are now, and just moving in the right direction. It's not about being perfect. There is no necessity for perfection. So yeah. So somebody is saying, I intermittent fast, however, I don't eat breakfast. I usually eat 12 to 1 p.m., but it is recommended not to skip breakfast, so it's confusing. Yeah, it really is, isn't it? I go to the gym 2 to 3 times a week and eat breakfast then, but if I'm working, I don't have breakfast. I don't want to miss my tea as I have a 9-year-old, so I still want to eat lunch and tea. Just confusing if it's a good thing to miss breakfast when fasting or not. Good question. Well, Sam, I would say based on everything we've talked about today, having breakfast appears to be quite a good option for helping with weight management. So it might be that maybe having a smaller meal with your child would be something you could do rather than your main meal then. But obviously, it's about what you can manage and not upsetting. If you're finding that your energy is good when you wake up in the morning, you've got a zest for life, you're losing weight, and that's working for you, then it's
Yeah.
working for you,
Don't
isn't it?
don't change anything.
Yeah.
If it's working for you, if you feel like, oh, it's not working as well as I'd like, then maybe trying something a little bit different and, still having tea with your son, but maybe just having a smaller portion of it and you still enjoy that meal with your child. But maybe
Yeah.
having something. And I think you're right. And I think you said that you would eat before you go to the gym. Generally, you'll just perform better at the gym if you've had something that's given you some energy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, Looking for some healthy sweet snacks because you have a sweet tooth. Don't forget, we can change our palates. Um, we can re-educate ourselves not to have that driving sweet tooth, and maybe start keeping something like a mood and food diary and just see what's going on for you. Are you craving sweet things? Is it because you're not eating enough protein? Are you really making sure your plate is balanced in the first place? Is it habit? Is it boredom? All of the things that, can trip us up, can get in the way. And I can see that somebody said that the fewer sweet things you eat, the easier it becomes, I think is the comment. And I think it's true. We can educate ourselves out of that sweet requirement, can't we? And we can move forward. So maybe keep the feed and mood diary. Just have a look at what your patterns are. And if there's anything that would help, if you put in a bigger breakfast, would that just get you through the day a little bit more easily? Give it a go. See how you get on and let us know.
yeah.
Raman, can you just share the feed and me diary if you haven't done that already? Sorry to
Um,
interrupt.
there's someone who I heard not to eat after 6 p.m., but I have supper around 4:50 to 5:15. I'm always hungry before bedtime. So think about your timings. So what time do you go to bed? If you're going to bed sort of 6 hours after you've had dinner, I'm not surprised that you're a bit hungry. So I would make that your dinner time a bit later if it sounds I don't you haven't said what time is your bedtime. But I would say eat a bit later. And if think about that eating window, what is your eating window if you're doing that style of eating? It is better to have a bit of a fast in the evening, so you're doing the right thing. But if it's so painful and uncomfortable, it's kind of we don't want you to be miserable, and I think you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by then having a late night snack, but you had your dinner really early. So could you just have your dinner, not have the late night snack, and have your dinner at say 6:30? And then go to bed at 10 p.m. and feel okay with that. Have some clear fluids, have a nice herbal tea or something in the evening. So you still, you can have something. Just try not to, if you have the snack, unfortunately you do get then sort of another insulin peak and that sort of thing. So you're sort of losing the benefit of that longer fast. So yeah, so we're looking for those gaps between meals. So think about that. Just look at your routine. We don't have to be rigid about, don't eat after 6 p.m. It depends what time you go to bed. I mean, that would be fine if you went to bed at, say, 9 p.m. or 9:30, and then you should be fine. But if your bedtime is 11 or 11:30, that's a long time to, I'm not surprised that you're hungry towards the end of that. So, um, just have a think about your timings there, I think, and it's not necessary to have six, really firmly in your mind.
Yes, very much. There's obviously sparked a lot of interest, which is great. So thank you for all these questions. It's making us think, which is good. Somebody is saying they're taking Wegovy, not ravenous, but still look for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That is perfect. That's exactly what we want you to do. We don't want you to stop eating when you're taking a weight loss medication. We want you to retrain your understanding of what healthy foods are, how to eat in a way that's going to sustain your energy, sustain your health, and sustain your weight management long term. So when you finish and you get to your goal, you can at some point come off those weight loss medications and just be in a position where you are in control of how you eat and what you eat. So have a look at that. Yeah, that sounds great, to be honest. Somebody is eating a lot of eggs, sometimes 3 or more per day. Is that too many? It would be for me. I can't stand them. But generally, no. It's fine to eat eggs as long as you tolerate them and as long as you are eating other foods as well. We would really advocate variety in what we eat as much as possible. So make sure you're bringing in some variety too. I hope that makes sense. Do you agree, Sam?
Yep, absolutely. We ought to talk about diversity in your diet, eating the rainbow, mixing it up, your protein sources, and but yeah, in general, eggs are great. If you can tolerate them, if you like them, if you enjoy them, there's so many different ways to cook an egg, so can be quite versatile.
Brilliant.
Someone's asking about 16/8 intermittent fasting. So in general, we would suggest that your eating window starts in the morning rather than it goes late into the night. So, yep, correct. Um, is a protein bar okay to have throughout the day as a snack? I divide it into three. Um, so in terms, I mean, if you must have a snack, if you're kind of, I'm glad that you're thinking about snacks actually. But I don't, in general, it depends on the protein bar, I suppose, but we want to think about how processed it is, etc. A handful of walnuts and an apple would be a good snack. Do you know what because we know that that's got healthy fats in, it's got some fiber, and it's got protein. So that would be a good snack. So you don't particularly need to go for protein bars. And I can't really comment on a protein bar. I haven't, don't know what it is. But it sounds like you're on the right lines. I'm really glad that you're going for a protein-based snack if you have to have a snack. And maybe gently trying to switch it over. It doesn't have to be walnuts and an apple. It could be, it's quite an unusual, quite a strange combination, I guess, like celery and peanut butter is actually, I think, is really nice. It's a nice snack. You could have something, what else could a boiled egg is a good snack. If you had whole wheat toast with some nut butter, that would be a nice snack. If you had to have a snack. In general, we're trying to move away from snacks, but I realize that we're all at different stages and we can't go cold turkey,
Exactly.
but so, gradually reducing the snacking. But if you had to have a snack, I'm really glad you're looking at protein. It's something that has protein, but I tend to veer away from things that are super processed and wrapped in plastic.
Okay, interesting question here about time restricted eating. So that would be things like the intermittent fasting where you're doing a 12-12, a 16-8, a 14-10 pattern in the day. So does that actually have a beneficial effect on your metabolism? So that's a really interesting question. I think it would be around about what that is going to be doing is that's going to be enhancing your insulin sensitivity. So you have a break of a minimum of 12 hours overnight when you're not eating. And that's the key thing. So if you're doing a 12-12 pattern, you're not eating for 12 hours. If you're doing a 14-10, you're not eating for 14 hours. If you're doing a 16-8, you're not eating for 16 hours. And that follows through with a question that popped into the chat box just now about how do you fit your meals in if you're doing a 16-8. So the key thing with those styles of eating or that pattern of eating is you are getting better insulin sensitivity because you're having that long fast overnight. And there's a really easy step is to just start with that 12-12 for most people. And actually, for some people, that's all you need to do to really enhance your insulin sensitivity is just to work on getting a bigger break overnight. So yeah, see how you go with that. And in terms of metabolism, then if your insulin sensitivity improves, then what will happen is you will be slightly more effective in terms of how your body is working the amount of inflammation that you have. So in a roundabout fashion, it may then have a beneficial effect on your metabolism. I hope that makes sense. It's a bit of a round the story. Sorry, it's a long answer. People are asking about dried fruit, Sam. I'm not the biggest fan.
They're quite well. I would just say it's quantity. So
Yeah,
a date, for example, if you had sort of 2 or 3 dates and chopped them up and put them in with some Greek yogurt and, some lovely toasted nuts, that would be like a breakfast, maybe some berries in there as well. I think we're bigger fans of berries than we would be of dried fruit, just because the dried fruit has all the moisture taken out and you've got a lot of sweet in there. You do have fiber as well, so they're not, it's not the end of the world at all. And if you have a sweet tooth, then they're quite a good option.
yeah,
But I would really look at quantity because there is a lot of sugar in dates and apricots and figs, and I find them delicious. But they are
because they're naturally sweet, aren't
they're
they?
very naturally sweet and they're great.
Yeah,
They're a whole food, so there's nothing plastic about them. They're great, but quantity. So just really look at how many of those things you're having, because they do taste like sweets, really.
yeah.
Dried apricots are like sweets.
So like you can fill a medjool date, which are the sort of lower sugar ones with some nut butter of some description, maybe peanut for Sam and almond for me. And they are a delicious snack. So, and again, you've got then the healthy fats and a little bit of protein there as well. So it's an absolute winner. Um, yeah, but
Yeah.
again,
But again,
moderation, isn't it?
you'd want to have kind of one of those as a
Yeah,
sweet treat just to
yeah,
enjoy, and then we're all at different levels, but like with anything, it's portion control as well of
yeah.
these things.
I've seen a couple of questions about children and whether we should be encouraging them to eat less. And obviously, this is a webinar which is designed for adults. But from all I've read, neither of us are experts in child um, nutrition, I would say. But I would say we probably do need to be educating our children to eat less sugary snacks because we're creating the habits for them for their lifetime. So yeah, but they're generally a lot more active. If they're running around playing sports and things, they may need those snacks occasionally. So see how you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 or 4 black coffees a day have an impact on insulin balance. Sam, any thoughts?
I I have some thoughts. I think it would probably impact because it's a stimulant, so it would impact probably metabolism, but I mean not in any kind of long-term effect, but in a short-term effect, it obviously can increase heart rate and that sort of thing. So it might
Yeah.
have that kind of impact. I don't know about insulin. If you're having black coffee without sugar, I don't think it would have much of an impact on insulin, but I don't know. That's just from physiology. Any idea, Ruth?
I think the research is confusing. I think in the initial phase, if you're not used to drinking coffee regularly, there may be more of a glycemic sort of a blood sugar impact. Again, those sort of continuous glucose monitors can be really interesting because you can actually see how things are affecting you. Because again, we're all incredibly different. So some people may have more of a response to coffee than others. My advice is to just tuck it on the end of one of your meals, and then you sort of blunt, a bit like combining the high glycemic food with the lower glycemic food, you can blunt the impact of it. So yeah, see how you go.
There are some lovely tips in the chat box I just wanted to highlight. Thank you so much for people are sharing their little wins. Have a little portion of dark chocolate to sort of see off a sweet tooth for dessert. That's great. Sort of boiling eggs and then keeping them um, on hand as snacks. That's great. Dates with nut butter straight out of the freezer. Interesting. One at a time. One at a time. Very good.
Somebody's ordered a food and mood diary. Well done, Verdine. That's really great.
Well, someone had
Um,
said earlier that they got on really well with the food and mood diary, so
oh,
that's
that's really
super.
good news.
Thank
Brilliant.
you for feeding back.
Somebody's asked about eggs and high cholesterol. Are they bad for people with high cholesterol? I think again that's quite an individual story now. Generally, there is no evidence to suggest for the general population they are problematical for cholesterol, but there are some people with some genetic predispositions that may be better off having less eggs, but it is so individual. Overall, we wouldn't recommend that you didn't eat eggs.
Yeah.
Great. We're at two. I'm going to take one final question because it's interesting, and then we're going to disappear. So please do go if you would like to. Or should we just go? Better to listen to your hunger, which leads to not eating for long periods. I would say no. What would you say, Sam? Quick fire answer. Listen to your
Uh,
hunger, abstain from eating for long periods.
uh, it depends, and that could be someone who's taking weight loss medications. I think having a routine and working with your physiology is
I agree.
really what we would go for. Having those 2 or 3 meals in a sensible eating window, not eating late into the night, being mindful when you do eat. So chewing your food, enjoying the textures, the different tastes that are in each mouthful. You know, those are um, really powerful ways. I think if we're purely sort of hunger focused, especially if I know a lot of the people here will be on weight loss medications, and we have to be really careful with weight loss medications because it can have a really big impact on appetite. And even though we are on a weight loss journey, we do need to eat. We do need our nutrition. We do need to hydrate, and um, we don't want to drop weight too quickly. That's one of the things that we are slightly concerned about with weight loss medications, just that it's um, a nice steady weight loss so that our mind and the way we think and our habits and our patterns can really be augmented because we have that headspace. We're freed up from our thoughts of appetite and what I want to eat next, etc., etc. Because because we're using a certain medication. If we are, so I would, in those sense, I would really be thinking, yes, I've got to have, this is my lunchtime, this is my dinner time, this is what I have for breakfast, and these are other, I'm considering how I'm hydrating over the day as well. It's a very long answer to a short question. Sorry.
No, I agree completely. And thank you so much for being with us today. Just to remind you, we're here next Tuesday. It's a bank holiday on Monday, so we will not be here on the Monday. Take care. Have a good week. Thanks to Raman for all of your support as well. And
Yes.
have a fabulous week, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your ideas in the chat box too.
Brilliant.